As far as motions to vacate, or otherwise known as motions to set aside a judgment, there's 3 requirements to be successful on any motion to vacate. I'm going to go through those, and then a couple of things to think about in addition to, in terms of your decision-making process on making the motion or not. First off, if you're going to make a motion to vacate, which is essentially attack the judgment, typically that's to show there's some defect in the case, and 90% of the time that's a default judgment was entered, that you weren't served correctly. Many people call and say, look, I had no idea there was a judgment against me, I never got served, had no idea about it. So there's 3 boxes you want to check. 3 boxes you want the judge to check. Because this is a motion, this is in front of a judge, you must get the judge's decision in your favor to vacate a judgment. First off, you've got to show that the service was defective. And I will tell you many times that's quite frankly the easy part. It's a factual question, you were served or you were not. I have another video on the various types of service. People will get documents and think that they're not legal. You should assume everything you get is legal. But let's assume you can check the box. You were not served. They went to the old address. This is very common. They go to the wrong address, they go to an old address, they give it to somebody else, they didn't give it to you. Sewer service, bad service is a problem. And many judges will hear you out on whether or not you were served correctly or not. The next box that needs to be checked is that you moved promptly to make this motion. You can't know about a judgment for a long period of time, 2 years, and then make the motion. As soon as you learn or become aware of a judgment is against you, that you contend is improper, you need to make that motion timely. And timely in this instance, in this legal instance, is 6 months. So if you were garnished a year ago, or levied a year ago, or became aware of the judgment a year ago, you're too late. You can't wait a year to make this motion. If you know there's a judgment against you now, you're on the clock, and that clock is 6 months. Let's assume you can do that. Assume you can show that you didn't know about it, you learned about it last week when HR told you that there was a garnishment against you. Third box, and this only applies when the judgment is more than 2 years old. If the judgment is less than 2 years old, then there's only the 2 requirements. If it's more than 2 years old, or you have a debt buyer, in which case it's 6 years, you need to show the third element. And many times this is the problem. You have to show that you have a defense to the case. The court is not going to unwind a judgment that's more than 2 years old if in fact you owe the money. It sounds counterintuitive, it is counterintuitive, but the court's position is, look, we're not going to open up this case unless you can show me not only that you weren't served, but you need to show me that you don't owe the money. And in many cases, when it's a credit card or a medical bill or something along those lines, there's not much dispute. Now, if you don't owe the money, excellent. You have to show that you don't owe it. They have a defense to the case. So if you can show those 3 items, that you weren't served correctly, that you moved promptly, timely to tell the court about the problem, and that you actually have a defense of the case if it's an older judgment, then you should be successful with your motion to vacate. But what do you get? Here's the pro tip. What do you get when you're successful? What you get is a judgment vacated, but the case isn't over. You don't win the case. A motion to vacate is asking the court to allow you to have a defense, that you never got your due case in court. You never had your due process. And therefore, when you win the motion, you now get due process. So now it's them versus you. You get to file an answer, you get to contest the case. So if you owe the money, and if you win the motion to vacate, you're going to pay a lawyer for the motion to vacate, you're going to pay the lawyer to defend the case, and you're likely going to settle it anyway because you owe them the money. Smart play may be to resolve the judgment rather than spend all that time and money to get it reversed when you're going to pay them anyway.